I'm Anthony Zaller.
I'm Mike Thompson.
And today we wanted to briefly talk about some expense reimbursement issues. We have a new Department of Labor opinion letter about mileage reimbursement on the federal level. And we're also going to be addressing some expense reimbursement issues that employers need to keep in mind when employees are working from home during the COVID-19 pandemic. So first, I wanted to jump into this new U.S. Department of Labor opinion letter. It was issued on August 31st, 2020. And again, this was applying federal law, and it pertains to federal law. The DOL said that employers do not have to use the IRS mileage rate to reimburse their employees for mileage when they use their car for work purposes. This opinion letter doesn't have a whole lot of effect here in California because the opinion letter is addressing federal law under the FLSA. California, it's pretty well developed already. Labor Code 2802 applies here in California that basically says employers have to reimburse employees for their out-of-pocket expenses for any kind of expenses they incur while they're working. It includes mileage, among other things, as Mike's going to talk about here in a minute. And then we have a California Supreme Court case that has come out and interpreted this Labor Code 2802 in the context of reimbursing employees for their mileage. And in this Gattuso versus Hardy-Hanks case, the California Supreme Court said, just as the Department of Labor came out this week and saying that the IRS rate is not required, the California Supreme Court said the IRS rate is not required. It is an option employers can use to reimburse employees for their mileage. And if employers use it, it's presumptively valid, but they don't have to use that rate. The employers and the employees can come up with a rate, agree on a rate that's less than the IRS mileage rate, and reimburse the employees based on that rate. And the court actually set up some different scenarios, flat fees for reimbursement, a monthly flat fee, and some different scenarios in that case that employers could use. And the takeaway from that case, too, is that the employee and the employer are free to agree to a different rate, reimbursement amount. The rate, though, has to be enough to cover the employee's out-of-pocket expenses. It can't be less than what's reasonable to cover their expenses. And then the other big takeaway there is once the employee agrees to that rate with the employer and abides by that, after the fact, if the employee wants to challenge that rate, the California Supreme Court was clear that the burden then is on the employee to come up with records and evidence to establish to support their challenge to that rate, that it wasn't enough to reimburse them. So it puts the burden on the employee to challenge that after the fact. So this opinion letter from the Department of Labor doesn't change the state of law here in California, but it's a good reminder to employers and shows that federal law is consistent with California law on this issue regarding mileage reimbursement. And also, we'll have a link to the Department of Labor's letter that you can go read the letter, but it really gets into all the individualized issues that come up in the mileage reimbursement context. Gas prices for different regions, different areas, types of cars the employees are using, depreciation issues, traffic conditions. Right. It's going to affect mileage on the cars and things like that. So a lot of those issues come up, and so it's good for employers to look at each individual employee, come up with possibly different reimbursement rates for each employee as well, based on all the particular circumstances. So that came out on the federal level. Mike, here in California, what are we seeing here in California for expense reimbursement for employees working from home during COVID-19?
Well, we're seeing a lot. Employers are having to grapple with a situation that they may have not been used to before. If you had everyone in the office before, you didn't have to think about it. But now, if you're having office employees work from home, if they're using their own computers, if they're using their own internet and phone, California plaintiffs' attorneys are looking for cases where those aren't being reimbursed and arguing that the employee's home office may be an expense that has to be reimbursed. Certainly, internet, phone plans, to the extent that the employee is using that, the employer needs to keep that in mind and factor in a reimbursement so that that's being covered. Another hot topic in California, I think, is cell phone use, both for employees who are working remotely, but also employees who are working in the store, to the extent that you're having them and requiring them to use their cell phone for work, that is potentially reimbursable expense. What do you think about that?
Yeah. No, and I agree. But the big question comes up, and we hear this from employers all the time, is how much do we reimburse for a cell phone use then?
Or, well, what you hear is, well, if my employee was already going to have their cell phone plan and they already had an unlimited plan, them using it for work doesn't cost them anything else. So
right.
Do I have to reimburse that at all?
Right.
And, there's some case law on it, and I think plaintiffs' counsels do challenge and say that, yes, you need to reimburse at least something that accurately and reasonably represents the share of the use that is business on their plan. And so you have to look at, either employee by employee or figure out something that is good faith and reasonable that factors in the cost of the plan and the amount of use that is business versus personal and reimburses on that basis.
Yep.
But again, California, as you said, with the vehicle reimbursements, it's flexible and it allows employers a lot of flexibility to craft those plans and to work with employees. But again, as you said, most importantly, it has to be, whatever the agreement is, it has to be enough to actually cover the cost of the employee.
Yep, they're out-of-pocket expenses. And that's the thing. The courts, I think, and with this DOL opinion letter that just came out too, everybody recognizes if you were to sit down and do this to the penny and track everything, car depreciation, mileage, gas prices, it's super tedious. It would be more time doing that than what the reimbursement would actually amount to. So the courts are trying to craft something that's a little more flexible, but with the minimum requirement that it is still paying for the employee's out-of-pocket expenses. So that's the key thing to keep in mind. And and I guess it's a good thing and a bad thing with that court case that came out about the cell phone reimbursement on how much to reimburse. The court said even if they do have those flat rate plans, you still have to reimburse them a pro rata amount that they're using their cell phone for work purposes, but then didn't talk about how to do that analysis and what would be reasonable, and kind of left it up to employers and employees to work that out. So there's some gray area there. So I think everybody needs to approach that carefully.
And I think a best practice in connection with that is to have a good written policy that explains to your employees, if not the specific rate, but at least the very least gives them a forum or a channel to where they can tell you, hey, I don't think this is sufficient to reimburse me, and you can address that issue when they bring it up, versus if the employee has no way to communicate that to the employer, that's where I think you run into trouble down the line, is they'll say that it was under reimbursed the whole time and I never had any opportunity to get that fixed. Right.
No, that's a good point. And I think if the employer develops has that complaint procedure in place and the employee doesn't utilize it, it's a pretty clear argument that then the burden's on the employee to prove otherwise after the fact then, and come up with those records, do that detailed analysis to show that they weren't actually reimbursed.
Right.
Great. Well, thanks for your thoughts.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please let us know if you have any questions. If you have any ideas for future videos, please let us know as well. And always, please feel free to comment and like the videos. Thanks.